Hello everyone. Today is going to be slightly different. Instead of doing a redstone tutorial, I am about to just ramble about fireplaces. And mostly, this is because of the upcoming game drop. We have a autumn-themed biome, and I think one of the neat little things you can do with cooler biomes is make a fireplace to kind of give that impression of a cozy base or vibe. Uh, Unfortunately, I'm not actually very good at making fireplaces in Minecraft, and I would say so are a lot of people, and that's just because of the render and size of the game. If you have a bunch of meter-wide blocks and you have a meter-wide campfire, that kind of greatly limits what you can do. And so a lot of times you'll see designs like this, where you just have the campfire, or possibly a burning bit of netherrack, surrounded by stone, either 1 block deep in this case, or 2 blocks deep in this case. And I think this works for some builds, but as you can kind of see, especially when it's inset, you have this feeling of the fire being cut off. It's pretty cramped, it's not particularly interesting, and it is pretty bulky. And if you're trying to go for some sort of realism, like if you have a chimney, the thing is, there's not a lot of blocks to cover this up, so you're kind of limited to trapdoors or shelves, which are wood, and that's not always a problem, because wooden mantles do exist, but it does limit your kind of options unless you want to pull the fireplace out into the room like this, because that does allow you to use more interesting shapes like stairs and blocks. And also, if you widen the fire, the fact that it is so deep and inset kind of is a little bit resolved, but I'd say this is still a very limited system, and if you wanted to have this even further out to give it further shape, make it not feel like the fire is so recessed back, it just makes the fireplace even more bulky. Like, I've seen designs where it's 2 blocks out into the room, and yes, this is entirely a decorative thing, and that maybe isn't the worst aspect, especially because you do want to have a room feel a little bit full or somewhat full. That does eat into a lot of space for essentially what is a highlight of a single or maybe up to 3 or 4 blocks that are the actual interest piece in it. So I asked myself, how can I implement actual fireplace styles or parts that kind of improves the look of it while also kind of avoiding that blockiness feeling? And in particular, I took inspiration from kind of what they did in medieval times, as well as kind of the most advanced fireplaces out there that you'll kind of see. For this first one, this is basically how medieval houses, or maybe not necessarily houses, but like medieval palaces or like large kitchens or universities would approach things. And to kind of get the history behind it, fireplaces aren't actually as old as people think. What people did for most of human history was have a fire pit in the house where they'd literally light a fire in the middle of the room, and there would be a hole or cupola or possibly a vent on the side to let the smoke out, but otherwise it's just this. But this actually had, as you can imagine, a lot of safety issues with it, and eventually code, because medieval people did have code, and just kind of general interest in getting away from a really smoky, soot-covered house that was about to burst into flames, was to move this to the side and make more of a dedicated stone room or mini room to put the fire in. Which brings us back to this. And while I don't think this would work in every build, obviously, it does have that kind of more open feel. Because it is more of a room, you do have this nice extra block to kind of better see the flames and smoke. And if it works for you, this is definitely a lot more interesting to me than most other Minecraft fireplace designs. But of course, like, if you want something that feels like an actual fireplace and doesn't take up space, because this is still effectively a 2-block deep design, your other option is the Rumford. And much like the Medieval Ages design, this is from a real-life concept where kind of the realization that Count Rumford had in the 1700s was that fireplaces mostly heat radiatively, so much like that kind of open medieval system, it's actually higher than the base of your fire. So all of the flames would be able to radiate and give out heat. And in addition, his other realization was that you want to have the walls kind of sloped open so you aren't restricting the sides of it. And while we can't make slopes in Minecraft, we do have walls and stairs which can emulate it pretty well, to the point that instead of being 1 block or 2 blocks deep, this is actually almost half a block deep. So even though this is flush with the wall, the fire still feels like it's actually like fairly open, while at the same time feeling like it is recessed and actually dedicated in a fireplace spot without spilling out. And it also gives you this nice kind of distinction of the mantle in comparison with the rest because of that pop out. And even though I've added a extra wooden mantelpiece here with bits and bobs, I think if I remove this and just had this be a flat wall, it would still work, in my opinion. And I think if you are trying to go for that kind of cozy vibe of a fireplace dedicated to actually heating an area, or at least an impression of that, and you don't want to go too big, this is a decent choice. You can probably replicate this by just looking at it, but just for fun, we'll take a closer look at what I did. And essentially, again, this is all about replicating that shape that Rumford had in mind. And so you can do that by kind of taking this flat back and then adding a wall or stair to kind of have that restriction. So you can maybe see here that we have this almost cone shape. I haven't tried this with stairs a ton, but I think they can visually work if you have that in your kind of base fireplace set. And then we're just going to simply take this up to another level. And at this point, you can put down your fire, your campfire or fireplace, and then cover over with whatever you want your mantle to be. Now, I do recommend using stairs, or a block set that includes stairs, to give the impression that there is actually a chimney going up. And as you can see, like, the mantle still feels flush, but there is a hole visible behind there, and this is actually pretty accurate to what you would see in an actual Rumford fireplace, because they are designed to have a narrow throat at the back of the wall just so the fire can run straight up as smoothly as possible. And finally, we're going to close this off just so there isn't anything weird that like players can see or anyone visiting if they wanted to get really close. But of course, like, you could have some sort of like continuation here so it looks like there is a chimney or throat if you wanted to get to that level of detail, but it's not super necessary. And as you can see, like, we have our cozy little fireplace that is open but also recessed. And if you want a final touch, of course, most real fireplaces have their kind of hearth extend beyond it just to make sure that embers don't catch any wood and flooring on fire, or, just makes things a little bit neater. And with that, I will say good